Hey y'all, welcome to our third week of the course. This is your first of two modules for Tuesday. And this one centers around submitting your mood boards as kind of your final mood board submission here. So I just want to take a few minutes to talk a little bit about getting these ready and polishing and setting them up. And some maybe highlighting some important things that I've noticed as y'all have submitted your first round of mood boards for review. One of the first things I just want to mention is just make sure you have the file name named properly. You can see up here at the very top, I don't know that this actually changes size-wise, but your final submission for your mood board, the file name should be project1 underscore moodboard underscore your initials, and then of course .pdf. That's important for me to keep track and be able to know who's submitted their mood boards and for file tracking. It's also a good best practice, especially if you're working with other, in a long-term career, working with others, just to attach your initials there at the end, especially if you're sharing files and things like that. So just watch that. Project1 underscore moodboard underscore your initials. So for me, it's rsf dot pdf. So just watch that whenever you submit. A couple things that I've just kind of went through and maybe changed. And again, this is a time for you a couple days afterwards, after you've gotten your feedback, to maybe just take a fresh look at your mood board. Consider any feedback you received from your peers. I've also provided some feedback by the time you're ready to watch this video and submit as well. So take any of that feedback into consideration. Make any necessary changes you need to make. If you're missing something or you need to push it stylistically a little bit, definitely jump back into your mood board and tweak it a little bit before submission. And so some of the things that I've done is just I've just tweaked up the photography style here. I really like how in my UI inspiration these kind of photos overlay, and I mentioned that, but didn't really kind of push that in my design a little bit. So I've just went back through and I've just maybe layered these photos a little bit. So very minimal for me, and again, it's going to be different for everybody depending on how well your first mood board was and what that submission looked like. So this is a time for you to go back in to your mood board after you've had that chance to review peer feedback, review my comments. And just make any necessary tweaks. Again, you might have been missing something. You might have had might have a spark of inspiration. You want to push the limits a little bit creatively. So time to go back in, make any tweaks, and then resubmit it for your final. I had mentioned the file naming to just be mindful of for your mood boards. And this is going to be the same for every milestone and deliverable of our project. So when we move on to wireframes this week, in the next module below this that you'll need to watch tonight, it'll be project1 underscore wireframes. When we move into prototypes, it'll be project1 underscore prototype. So that's going to be a similar cadence as we move through project 1, project 2, project 3. So just be mindful of that. Watch that. And as we submit our final, just a small tweak we're gonna make to that. So before we jump into actually, submitting and generating our PDF, one thing I wanted to note that you may have caught on as you've created your mood boards, and if you click on the artboard itself, you get this nifty little dotted line here. Now, this is going to be really cool as we move into wireframes and into our prototypes, because we'll talk a little bit about above and below the fold. The fold being kind of the classic. I'm looking around to see if I have anything newspaper-wise, but it would be kind of the classic thing you would expect if you were to kind of go to the grocery store and see the front page of the newspaper and see, everything's kind of neatly folded there in the rack. At the very top, you see what appears to be above that fold. And then as you unfold it, it's below the fold. It's very simple. And XD actually generates that fold line here based off what your dimensions of your artboard is, which is really cool. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go into wireframes, but you might have been wondering, as you click on your artboard, you explore your first effort and attempt in XD as a UI tool, maybe what this thing was, and you can adjust it actually depending on what your breakpoint is going to be. For our mood boards, it just defaults at the middle marker, the halfway point of the UI. But that'll be critical as we move into wireframes. We talk about breakpoints, we talk about above and below the fold, and things like that. So just a real quick note I wanted to share there. So I'm going to actually generate this for review. I feel like I'm ready to go. I'm ready to submit it. And so I'm going to export again the selected artboard. and we'll see what happens here. So I'm going to go back into the project folder that I had, and I'm going to go into my mood board. And right now you can see I've got project1 underscore moodboard underscore RSF, and this is the same project title up here, the file type. So I'm just going to actually just add that and append and add the word final. That's easy as that. I'm going to change it to PDF, and then I'm going to export it. And now I'm ready to go. I can upload that along with 200 to 300 words explaining some of the updates that you might have made, but then also some of the things you learned about mood boards as well. So it's that easy for tonight. Just any updates you might need to make, and then submitting it for final review. While I have you in this video, I just wanted to maybe provide a quick note about looking ahead towards what we'll submit for our final project presentation for Project 1. Each of those final presentations are essentially the culmination or the fulfillment of all of the work you've done so far. And so if you've had a late submission, or if you've got maybe a lower score on one of your deliverables, that's okay. You're going to have an opportunity to make that up in the final project presentation. Those final project presentations are worth 15% of your grade, as opposed to maybe less than that as we move into milestone 1, mood boards individually, milestone 2, wireframes, milestone 3, prototypes. And so really that final project is a chance for you to polish anything that you need to, clean up any mistakes you may have made along the way, and then submit that as your final presentation for the project. And so let me show you how that's going to work, and how I think it might be helpful as you guys finish each of these milestones, mood boards, wireframes, prototypes, to start thinking about the final project so it doesn't all come up at once at the very end. And there's some easy things that you can do. And so I'm just jumping over to another XD file that I've got here. I've just copied over the information that's presented in that the Project 1 statement in last week's course instruction in Blackboard. And so if you just open that up, you'll see Project 1 final presentation requirements and the information regarding how to post that and what that's going to look like. So your final Project 1 package requirement and format is going to be a final presentation of 1920 by 1080. And that's just the classic widescreen format of a presentation. Now, you might choose to do it in XD. That's my kind of tool of choice, especially if I'm going to be doing a lot of my work in XD. But you might ultimately spin up a Keynote file, or you might ultimately spin up a PowerPoint. If you're comfortable building in XD at this point, I'd encourage you to stay there, and I'll walk you through how I'm doing it now. But that 1920 pixels wide by 1080 pixels tall is just your classic kind of widescreen projector presentation format. You'll export that as a PDF, similar to what we've been doing, and that's so we don't have any issues as it relates to my machine reading your work and things like that. Your final name of that project is going to be Project 1 underscore presentation, again with your then initials attached to it. So for example, for me, it's going to be Project 1 underscore presentation underscore rsf.pdf. And again, this is just copied over from that Project 1 statement. So you can actually get started and kind of be building this in the background as you work on your milestones and deliverables. So there's just some information to share here. So you're going to post a PDF representing your full body of work, the culmination of everything you've done in Project 1. And we're actually going to replicate this for Project 2 and Project 3 as well, and Project 4 as we move into the final week of class. Your final project presentation should include the following basic framework. Now, if you do a little bit more than this, that's cool. Just have intention with it. Don't just throw stuff in to throw stuff in, but intentionally add where you need to. But at minimum, you need to have this basic framework. So a title slide, an introduction or an overview of the project. Now, you could kind of borrow some of the structure from the project statement, but I would encourage you to tweak it to match your own and to match the work that you're doing on this redesign. Any outcomes. So what's your elevator pitch? What's the summary statement of the work that you've done? Now, you might leave that slide blank and come back to it at the very end, but you can at least start to create the skeleton now. And then it's important to show the process, your process examples. So screenshots of the current website, the before, essentially where we're starting from, with perhaps a link to that website. Show your mood board with examples of what that looks like and a link to that. And I'll show you how to generate that here in a second. Wireframes. So link out to show the examples of your wireframes. We're not there yet. And you can see I don't have the check marks there because I haven't had a chance to do it in this file yet. prototypes, and then have a final slide of any learnings or top 3 things that you might have learned in the process as you went through the redesign of a local business. You're going to submit that PDF along with 200-word statement talking about the things that you're happy with regarding your final design. Typically in this, you don't want to kind of say, here's where I've struggled, or here's where, I wish I would have done better. Be positive about your work. This is the final package of everything you've done for this redesign. And the reason why we're focusing on presentations is quite often, whether you end up being, a graphic designer who works in the print industry or a graphic designer who works on UI and UX product design, you're oftentimes going to be required to present. It's going to be part of your job, part of your experience. And so I think it's important to be able to showcase your work in a way that's consumable and digestible, that also kind of lets the viewer or the person you're working with, the client you're working with, to be able to jump in to learn, to see more. And that's where those links come into play. So let me just show you real quick what I've started. And again, as we go through milestone 2, milestone 3, I'll come back into this and kind of show you how I continue to layer into this final presentation for submission a few weeks from now. So you can see here down here at the very bottom, I've just got a title slide. So check the box, I've got that, right? And I'm using assets and things that I've been doing in my mood boards, and this might change and tweak a little bit as we move into the final prototype, but I'm using those assets that I'm creating in my mood board to layer in. And so for me, this maybe took, 30 minutes last night because I already had all the assets and all the information for my mood board already ready to go. And I was just reusing some of those components. And that's what I would expect you to do here too. So just got project 1, we're in IXD spring 2021, a local redesign of Handel's homemade ice cream and yogurt, right? A nice picture of that ice cream and kind of showing that vibe and the photography that I want to include in that mood board that I had. I have a quick project overview. So number 2 on that list that we looked at earlier, project overview. So in this project, focus on taking the existing Handel's ice cream website, redesigning it with a fresh perspective. And again, some of this information comes from the overall project statement, but just tweak to match maybe what you're doing in your local redesign. I've highlighted the steps. That's always important. It's helpful to walk to be there as you walk a client through this presentation, perhaps. And then as we move on to number 3, this is the summary statement. And so I've just included a brief overview about who Handel's is and why it's important that we're doing the redesign, maybe what I'm hoping to achieve through the redesign, and then also highlighting the areas of focus for the redesign. Now, if you remember, this is what you submitted last week in selecting your business, the top 3 things that you wanted to focus on. And so again, you can see how we're reusing the information that you guys are working towards and building along the way to build this final presentation. So it's just really cool to see that at the very end, all this work comes together. You can use it to create a final presentation. This could be used in an interview if you were looking for a UI UX job as an example of your work. Could be easily translatable to a portfolio website or a great portfolio piece here at the very end of your college career. Excited that we're going to be able to do something like this in the class. So moving on to slide 4, I've got just the current examples. So we've already taken those screenshots. You've already got those in place. So I've just laid them out so you can see them all on one page. You might have multiple pages depending on the length of your screens and things like that, and that's okay. The important thing is to have it there. So to have your before examples. And I see a little mistake here. So I'm going to actually just bring that over. And so again, you can see we're layering in the things we've already done, and you can get started on this. So it's not kind of all at once at the very end happening for you. Here, then I move on to my mood board. So now I'm showing my process, and you can see along the way, these little tick marks at the very bottom, showing what page we're on, showing the process that we're in now. And this is mood board. So step 1. So I've brought over my color palette. I've brought over my adjectives. I've brought over my headline, my body font. Again, just as I go to present this to a client or to show the body of work that I've done as a part of this project, anybody who comes after me or comes back in after this project's done, they have a great understanding of what has been done as a part of this project, part of this redesign. Now I've split my mood board up into 2 sections because it's all not going to fit onto one screen. And again, this is just be helpful as you go through and talk about your work, and you can say, in the mood boards, here's kind of an overview textually and from a color perspective of what we're thinking, what we were thinking for the website. And then as we move into more visuals, here's kind of the example of the photography and the UI inspiration. So I just wanted to share that real quick because I think, sometimes that final project might sneak up on you, but if you kind of take it from the perspective of you're already doing a lot of this work in a discussion post or in your submission for your mood boards or your deliverables, you can start to layer this out and lay it out along the way as you go. And so if you go back into the project statement, you can copy and paste this into a new XD file and begin to maybe work your way through. This won't be due until the end of, I believe, week 5. Let me just double check that real quick. This will be due, at the end of week 4. This will be due as we submit our, as we look at finishing up our prototype and then submitting our final presentation, the culmination of all your work. So again, these are just little helpful tips that you can be doing along the way. Go ahead and submit your mood board that you're currently working on by 11:59 tonight. Really important that you hit that deadline. I just want to continually remind. Make sure you hit that deadline, 11:59 p.m. If you're running late, shoot me a note, shoot me an email, just so I know. But once we get into wireframes, not going to accept any work beyond the due date. So just make sure you hit that due date, you hit that time, and if you're running into any hiccups or running into any issues, then let me know. But just make sure you hit those deadlines. Make sure you hit those timelines, both for the submission of your final deliverables, your PDFs that you're submitting, but then also in your peer feedback, critical as well to do that. And so appreciate the work you guys have done so far. I think it's been great to see the redesigns you've chose and the mood boards. And so hopefully this was helpful as you go to submit your final mood board tonight by 11:59 p.m. And then go ahead and jump into the next module for this evening, for Tuesday. You might not get started on it right away. You might be focusing on submitting your mood boards first. But go ahead and get familiar with what we're going to be moving into next. We're going to be wireframing in a similar cadence that we just did for mood boards. But excited to see what y'all do for that. Hopefully this was helpful, and I'll talk to you again in the next module. See ya.